2020, and this is the weekly Backdrop developer meeting. We get together every week and talk about the progress of Backdrop and what's happening in the entire ecosystem from the development standpoint. We like to do little introductions to go through everybody that's here on the call. Let's start with you, Jen.
Sure. I'm Jen Lampton. I am zooming in from Oakland, California, where it is sunny and beautiful outside. That's my update.
Okay. Luke.
I'm Luke McCormick. I'm in San Ramon, California. I've been working on my Doctor Strange reality tricks where I can make the entire universe flip to the opposite of what they were and then back.
I'm not quite sure I follow that, but okay. Thanks, Luke.
Did it work? I'm experimenting with like Zoom tricks. Maybe it didn't work.
No, it just went black, but that's fine.
Oh,
well. Let's see. Tim, you're saying something. Why don't you go ahead and give your introduction too?
I'm making jokes about Luke muted, so probably better. I did see your effect though, Luke. So I'm Tim. I'm coming to you today from my parents' basement in Deerwood, Minnesota, and I had considered taking the week off, but realized we're talking about initiatives, and being that I've been pushing these for a while, I thought I better not miss the meeting. So I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Justin.
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Justin Christopherson. I'm in Denver, Colorado, taking a look at the sanitized database dumps today.
Thank you, Justin. Joseph.
I'm Joseph from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm working on, well, I don't know, just a bunch of random little things.
Thank you. And I'm Nate Lampton, and I'm running through the final things for 116 since the release is coming right up in a very short time. So let's see, community updates. Jen, did you have some updates here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that last week we had an open request to join the Contrim project, and after the meeting I provided some feedback on the module, and it wasn't even feedback on the Backdrop port. It was just some normal coding standard stuff about how to do doc blocks, and he applied them all immediately, and I was really impressed with the speed at which all of my feedback was addressed, and then the project got merged into Contrim right away. So I was very excited that we have a responsive proactive new contributor. So I just want to say thanks.
Super. Okay, let's go into the project report. We start off with 115. That's the current version of Backdrop and issues that we're working on to improve, usually with bug fixes and things like that in the current release. There's two issues of note that are getting some attention right now. One of which is one of the follow-ups to flexible layouts, adding the ability to disable the layout builder if you don't want your site or end users to be able to create custom flexible layouts. Then this issue, 4161, makes it so that you can disable that functionality within layout module. It's been marked RTBC. It's in the 115.2 milestone. Which I suppose it could stay there. It might also be something that we might put into 116 only. I'm not sure about that functionality, but that's what milestone it was put into at the time. So it's currently marked 115.2. And PHP 7.4 support, issue 4308, is another issue that would be great to get resolved as soon as possible. Joseph, here joining us, has done a lot of the work making all of those ports possible, and Indigo Zella has been going back and forth with him on addressing all of the feedback. So awesome work, you guys, about going back and forth and working those issues out. So both of those would be nice. to get completed before May 15th, which will be the release of 1.16, but it will also be the final release of 1.15, which will be 1.15.2. I should say, except for security updates, because 1.15.3 might come out if there's any security issues. So that's it for 1.15.2. 1.16 is the next minor version of Backdrop that includes a hefty list of new features this time around, which I'm very excited about. The ones that have status updates since last week, first of all, last week was the 30th of April, and May 1st, which was this past Friday, was feature freeze. And so we have completed adding new functionality into 1.16 with some exceptions that minor UX changes can still go in, and things like string changes and things of that nature. There's still some space for those changes. So let's see. One major thing that we got completed in this past week was a new user interface for text format configuration. The text formats previously had this rather unwieldy long form that, as you were checking and enabling certain filters on your formats, other parts of the form were changing. And we've shortened up that big long form and moved the configuration of individual filters into dialogues, making it so that that form is a little bit more manageable. It's also easier to see when you're making changes to the editor that it's adjusting the filters down below. So that's been a great enhancement. It's issue 1032 that was merged this past week. We have a follow-up issue for it at 4378, though, that is currently still open, that just has some minor suggestions about the way the interface is displayed, the location of checkboxes, for example, and the styling on some of the new buttons. So 4378 is our follow-up to improve mostly the consistency of that new text format user interface. So we'll still be working on that one in this next week. But even if we don't get it in, it's still UX changes, so it could go in even after release. But like always, when we make the new release, that's usually when we publicize a lot of the new features. So it would really be preferable to make it so that the screenshots all look like the final version, rather than making it a release announcement, take screenshots, and then change it right afterwards. Let's see. We also finished up. I guess Tim, you're the advocate for 2379. You could give us the final hurrah on update allowing author and date display customization, if you would like. You're muted. Okay.
Not sure too much to say other than, so the goal here was that users can now use tokens to modify the submitted by and date line on nodes. And the main thing we did at the end was we took out, there were some problems, some conflicts with comments. So right now this works only on the node itself. It doesn't work on comments. And it looks like it's been merged. Is that correct? Yep.
Yep, we're all done with it.
So thanks everybody who worked on this. I think this is going to be a really helpful feature. It certainly was a major annoyance of mine in the past. And I look forward to this change.
Awesome. Great. Let's see. We've also got one minor issue to try to get wrapped up, and that is, I can't remember what this spun out of, that cache clear all. We had a discussion where it was about to be added, new cache clear all calls were going to be added somewhere, and I said that we shouldn't do that because we have more granular alternatives to cache clear all. And then it was raised, well, does that mean that cache clear all is deprecated? And the answer to that was yes, but we haven't marked that anywhere. So 2158 is the suggestion that we officially mark it as deprecated and add a change record. So although that's a really small change and won't actually affect anyone because it's just documentation, it is something that in order to deprecate it in 1.16, we need to do in the next couple of days.
So I started taking a look at that, and we're actually still using cache clear all over the place, including in a lot of tests. So it's going to be a little more complicated than just putting in the watchdog deprecated function call.
Okay. Does it look like it'll be challenging, or is it a matter of just updating to the new cache function and then calling the appropriate bin everywhere?
I think it's just going to be a matter of just replacing the call everywhere. It's more tedious than anything else.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you have to just go look at H1 and see like, okay, what do they actually want cleared here, and put the correct line in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then it is a little bit more ambitious than I had suspected, but yeah, you're absolutely right that we shouldn't, if we're deprecating it, we should stop using it everywhere. And that should probably happen at the same time. Okay. 2158, so deprecating cache clear all, we would like to get that done before 1.16. Also related to things that needed change records to document their changes. Very early in the release cycle of 1.16, we merged entity cache into core issue number 74, which I think Joseph undertook purely because it was the oldest open issue in our our queue. So congratulations, Joseph, on completing issue number 74, even though I know that was done months ago. And this past week, we got a change record drafted. Joseph drafted the change record for that, and we're reviewing it to get it ready for publication. So that's looking really good. Lastly, we've got base and sub install profiles. Issue 3174 had been marked in the 1.16 milestone, but we moved it out of the milestone after feature freeze because it wasn't completed due to difficulty in testing it. But it's possible that we might not implement that at all. BW Panda is checking the alternative that was posted to the issue queue, saying like we might not need this because it's easily done without any core modification. And so he's verifying if that alternative will be suitable for his purposes, and if so, then potentially we might close that issue out entirely. For now, 3174 has just been moved out of the 1.16 milestone, but the issue itself isn't actually closed yet. And that's it. The 1.16 milestone is looking really sparse right now. We've only got 3 issues in the whole 1.16 milestone, which I think we have covered all 3 of those in that update. So it looks like it's going to be, dare I say it, somewhat leisurely finish to 1.16, which I absolutely appreciate. Of course, I say that, and then the last week it'll probably be the flurry of excitement that it always is. Maybe I can change one more thing.
Do we have like a release for testing this time?
That's a good point. Do we have a testing release? Yes, we do. So there's a 1.16 preview tag that was cut yesterday, I think. However, and so you can download it off of GitHub, but I don't think that we published the release notes for it yet. And so that means it's not on backdropcms.org. Is that right, Jen? Okay. So yes, there is a preview version. If you wanted to publicize it, Tim, then you could link over to the tag, but it's not really it doesn't say anything on that page currently. It's just like, here's an archive. And because it's not a published release, it doesn't even have like the official backdrop release that's been cut. However, for core, the packager doesn't really do anything for core, so it doesn't need to update the .info files or anything like that. So,
okay.
But I think our intention is that the holdup there is that we have to draft the release notes in a way that's good, because it makes it so that we don't have to draft the release notes later, because they'll already be written for the preview release. But if we get those drafted, then that should be published, and then it should be available on backdropcms.org as well.
Okay. Do we know how that's going to happen? Because it won't replace the release version, right? So where will it be published on backdropcms.org?
What ends up happening with it, because it's like it's called 116.0-preview, and what project module does is it treats it as though it were like an alpha or a beta version. And so it doesn't update the current release. It'll still show 115.2 or 115.1. And you'll be able to see it only by clicking like view all releases on the project page, and then it'll be under the list of all releases. So it won't really have any
Sure.
Even that page doesn't really say anything, though. It's literally just a link to the download file.
Okay.
So even if we do create it, it won't really be publicized in any way other than the effort that we may put forth into saying that it exists through like a blog post or tweet or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, that could be, I mean, it would be great. I say longingly, if we had something that said, here's what's in 116, like it's coming, and then said you can try it out now, like here's the preview release. But it also wouldn't hurt. I mean, I think it's good to give people an idea of what's coming before it's actually happened, rather than 116 is here, here's all the new stuff in it. But both approaches are are fine. That's it for the 116 update. Do you guys have anything else you would like to add around 116 or the or issues that we're currently handling? Okay. Well, I was going to go next into the next item on the agenda, which is initiatives. I was kind of hoping Jen would take this on, but it looks like this is kind of snuck up on me, that the decision day is today. Is that right, Tim?
Yes, I think it's a little bit weird that we chose today instead of after the release, but yes, that's what we apparently decided a few weeks ago. So, I mean, I'm not against postponing it a little bit further, although we could talk, we could have a little bit of a discussion about it. I don't know. Jen might feel differently though, because I know she's excited to get these. I can help get the discussion going if we're ready.
Yeah, why not? Well, let's wait for Jen to return to her seat here. But let's see, we don't have anything else on here. We could just run through the list here of the ones that we have submitted. Is this list comprehensive at this point? Do you know, Tim? That's in the agenda?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, my introduction would just be background information anyway, sort of for the recording or anybody who hasn't been following that. So
yeah, please go ahead.
What the goal was today was, well, okay, early this year, we did some strategic planning about how to improve the way we do business. And one of the issues that came up was how to prioritize things and focus our energy. And a possible solution that came out of that was this idea of initiative. And we created, it's been like 2 months ago now, I think we created space on the forum where anybody could propose an initiative. We have a rough idea. Initiatives are sort of projects with some definition. It's still a little bit, we're fleshing this out as we go. Initiatives might be, in my view, fairly specific. Well, have an end date. It shouldn't be, an initiative wouldn't be like fix one thing, but it could be a group of tasks that need to be done to accomplish some goal. And it might have an end date, or it might be kind of an ongoing thing that we just want to prioritize in the community. We want initiatives to have a project lead. They should have some definition and process. I think I don't know if there's any other major criteria. Anyway, so we have a place on the backdrop forums.backdropcms.org where anybody can introduce an initiative. And initiatives will have to be approved by the PMC. And what we were hoping for today was to just talk about in an ideal outcome. Today, we might actually be able to forward a couple of initiatives to the PMC for sort of approval. My own idea is that it's helpful to have sort of a package of them to get started. And by a package, I just mean 2 or 3. But then in the future that the PMC could add an initiative at any time they chose on an individual case-by-case basis. But the main reason for this meeting is sort of like, it's hard to pick the first one, or I feel like it's a little bit hard to pick them one at a time at the beginning because we want to pick a mixture, right? We don't, if we look at them one at a time, it's hard to say like, to get a good mix of them to start. So anyway, so that's the goal today, was just to sort of look at what we have so far. And if an ideal world, to put forward some kind of proposal to the PMC about which ones we think are most important. Anybody have any questions or anything to add to that? Go ahead. Jen, you were gone. I was just sort of quickly laying the background for initiative.
Yeah, that's great. I was also just reading your issue in the PMC queue about how to choose them. And it looks like that's also still up for conversation.
Well,
I like the things you just said about having a clear definition, having a leader. I think those are all solid things that will make a proposal more attractive.
Yeah. I think if somebody wanted to add something, oh, Lars, are you saying something to us? You're muted. Or is he talking to someone else?
I think he's talking to someone else.
Okay.
Are you asking for me?
What were you talking to us or someone else? Oh, he's on a call.
Sorry. What was the question?
No, it's okay. I just saw your lips moving and I thought you were trying to talk to us, but I guess not.
No, it's my common stream of interruptions. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
So do we want to review the ones that are there now? Is that your thought?
Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to just sort of kind of read through them quickly. I don't think, if we talk about them, each one of them very long, we'll be done with our time.
Yeah.
So should we just read through the list?
Yeah, that sounds good.
And maybe just one or two, if anybody can jump in. I didn't review all of them today, so I don't like increased Drupal compatibility. Is anybody here the one who proposed that? Luke, was that you or somebody else?
I think that's me.
Okay. A quick 1 or 2 sentence summary what that meant.
Yeah, sure. The subject. Wait, I just lost my screen here. All right, I'm not muted. Good. So the subject was originally Drupal compatibility helpers, and the proposal there is relatively contained in that I would like there to be the ability to use Drupal modules or Drupal themes unchanged, if possible. Now currently there's porting instructions that we're all familiar with to create backdrop themes and backdrop modules out of Drupal 7 modules. But as part of sort of a welcoming initiative, a welcoming feeling towards people wanting to come from Drupal, I was proposing, if possible, turning on a layer so that you can just say, okay, without any guarantees that it'll work, if you want to plug it in and let it rip, let's see what happens. Now, in particular, for example, with themes, the biggest difference that I'm aware of is replacing functionality that in Drupal 7 was provided by the page TippleFip with Layout Manager. And, maybe you could choose one or the other. Maybe you could either apply a default Layout Manager template or actually use a TippleFip. I mean, I'm not, you guys are more familiar with what would be involved with that. And for the module, I mean, obviously there's enough that has changed that there's no way we could guarantee that the functionality would work. But the difference would be, the requirements to have the info file changed in order for it to be recognized would be relaxed with this, where you could click a button, be like, say, okay, show me your Drupal modules, fire it up, let's see what happens.
So the quick summary would be to just make it easier to use Drupal 7 themes and modules.
Yeah, that's a quick way to say what I just said.
Good. We got to move through the list, I think, kind of quickly.
Sorry.
It's okay. The next one is include several ready-to-use themes. This Luke also proposed. We've discussed broadening that out to just to make it easier for site builders to customize the look of their site without a theme. But the idea that Luke originally came to us was just to have more ready-to-use themes, either in core or in contrib. I think that would have to be decided later.
Yeah, and the key bullet point here is to remove the barrier to entry.
Yep.
That people who aren't designers or aren't coders, give them an option where they could have a launchable site without having to understand either design or the technical nature of a theme.
Yep. So I added a couple of these. The documentation one, I'm not going to get very specific on, but basically it's just to add, make documentation better. I could envision something like the user, Drupal just had a big initiative to create kind of an official course on getting started, and that might be the kind of outcome of that initiative. I think I also added better support for contrib project maintainers, and that was just the idea. There was an initiative to recruit and support and increase activity in the contrib space. Built-in data import and export was probably Luke.
That's me. That's just FOMO for WordPress's ability to import and export ideas. I think you should be able to click a button within some, doesn't have to cover all of them, but within some Backdrop installations, and say dump the data, and then have another Backdrop installation they can suck in that same data. Like if we can have those two endpoints, then I'd be satisfied with that.
Right. The next two, I believe, were added by another user that I'm not familiar with, somebody fairly new to the community. Better caching and mobile approach. And I don't know what more to say about that. I think it's fairly descriptive. Better editorial compatibilities in SEO. I was just looking at, again, the same person added this one, and I think they were looking at things like Gutenberg in WordPress and suggesting that kind of usability issues, although we would need to look at that closer. The final telemetry is been a long time issue that I might have added it, but I know I've talked to a few other people, and there is some work going on that already. That's basically collecting statistics from users about what they're using. So we have better data in terms of like what kinds of features to add to core and how to improve core. There's a lot of issues in the issue queue that says before we progress, we need better telemetry or better statistics. So this would help address that problem. The last one I just did a few minutes ago, just to throw it out there, which again, we're already doing work on this, but I could envision a usability sort of testing initiative. To some extent, we already have the usability and design weekly meeting. So I don't know if this is necessary, but I thought it at least worth considering whether or not that was a good initiative. So those are the proposals we have right now. I think if somebody wanted to throw something on the table, they could, but I don't know exactly how to proceed here because of limited time. Any ideas? I'm gonna, not hearing anyone else jump forward, sort of my goal would be to sort of send, I don't know, this is fairly arbitrary, would be like to forward 3 of these to the PMC. And again, this is where including them in a package gives us the ability to sort of pick 3 complementary ones, sort of get started with, and then additional ones could be added later. And so I think, I don't know, this could be as simple as somebody throwing through a proposal, like of the 3 on here that they think kind of balance out and best suit the needs of the community. And then we would have to see if there's sufficient interest and or somebody who would take charge of each one. We could have
I'd be willing to put forth one of mine. I proposed 3 of them. Put forth the one that I would like to be most seriously considered, which is including the ready-to-go themes.
Actually, that makes me think that what a good way to do would be to quickly just sort of go around who's at the table right now and ask everybody to indicate what their top, say, 2 or 3 are. And that would give us all a sense of what other people see as priorities. And then we could see if there's a common theme that emerges. So Luke, do you have, I think the theme one is your top priority. Do you want to name 1 or 2 more that would be your second and third choice?
Probably telemetry.
Okay.
Jumps out at me as being something I'm anxious to see.
And a third one, or
do I have to? I'll just go with 2.
No, you can pass. Jen?
So the theme one is important to me too. I also like the idea of Drupal compatibility helpers, especially between now and end of life for Drupal 7. I think the easier we can make it for people to move from Drupal 7, the better for Backdrop.
Mhm.
Oh man, I like them all.
Right.
I like telemetry, probably be my third one, but also the SEO and better caching and mobile kind of go hand in hand. Both of those would make Backdrop sites perform higher in Google search rankings out of the box, which I think is something that a lot of people who are just looking for like, quick sites that are going to get them traffic would appreciate. So those would be my next 2.
Joseph?
I think the theme one would probably be number 1 for me. And then the better caching and mobile thing, although I don't know if there's enough information there to actually make an initiative out of it. But I guess it could be expanded.
Okay.
And then, I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts on the others.
Okay. I don't know if Lars is he turned off his camera, so he might be back on that phone call. If you're listening and you have anything to add right now, jump in. We'll give you 3, 2, 1. You can join us anytime. Nate, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I was somewhat distracted. Did you mention the usability testing one, or did you omit that one?
Yeah, I added that one at the last minute just because it's, I think, a worthy idea. One of the dilemmas, or work on something like usability won't stop if we don't make it an initiative. So I don't know if we need that to be an initiative, but it's there on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that one was pretty interesting, though, nonetheless, as being something that, if given dedicated resources, could have some valuable outcomes.
Right.
But I'd probably put that one as my second one. I think my first one would be telemetry. We've been talking about it for a long time and haven't had like the interest is strong there, and the scoping of it seems like we could solidify that. But yeah, it's always been like the complexity of building something that is both server side, like backdropcms.org plus Backdrop, like that kind of integration has been challenging to us in the past. And so I think that would be a good option that kind of requires a team.
Yeah.
but those are the only two that really jump out to me.
Telemetry and usability. Okay.
The testing in particular, like
Right.
the idea of actually executing UX testing.
Right. Good. Well, I think that just leaves me. And my probably top two. So, my criteria are a little bit issues I understand the best, and sort of, things like better caching and mobile approach. I don't really know what an initiative would address there, so it's hard for me to be as excited about that. Not that it's not important, but I like telemetry, and because also there's already some momentum there, but I think it also it's broad enough and could really use sort of the structure of a committee. I think the theming one is also really near the top of my list. Usability would be, although, and I think that it would benefit from being an initiative, but I'm fairly confident that we'll make some progress, whether it's an initiative or not. I think those are probably my three top. Documentation is sort of on the edge. I guess I'm least convinced that we have sort of the energy around documentation right now. It's important, but that might, if I were to propose one 6 months from now, it might be documentation maybe. So I like telemetry, usability, and the theming are probably my top priorities. So I think we have consensus, some rough consensus around, well, the telemetry and the theming probably got the most of the five of us here. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like picking a third one, it's not clear to me which one it would be. Does anybody want to make an argument for, like?
What do we want to do? Because we're going to push this to the PMC, right? And if we only propose 3 and they accept 3, then there isn't much of a vote for them there. So do we want to do like the 3 that we all liked? If there were 5, we could propose like those 5.
Well, that's a good question. Part of my thought was that if we sort of gave a suggested slate to the PMC, it would be much easier.
They would say yes, as opposed to, yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah. Plus my brief experience with the PMC is that if it's like choose between 5, that just makes that process a lot more difficult. And
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm anxious to do the data import and export, but I want to commit to leading the theme initiative if everyone's okay with that. And so I wouldn't want to, after I'm done with that, I'd like to do the data export import thing.
I also feel like I'm motivated to work on 777 compatibility even outside of an initiative. Right. So that being my third one would drop off and leaves me with the 2 that everyone else likes anyway. So yeah.
I think it's fair to say one of the criteria in picking them should be which ones are going to benefit the most, right? If something is moving along fine or likely to move along without it being an initiative, there's less incentive. On the other hand, we don't want to pick an initiative that has no momentum and isn't going to get anywhere. So
yeah.
I mean, Jen, I'm not against suggesting more to the PMC, giving them a bigger slate to choose from. I'm just afraid that might paralyze and slow down the process too much. And well, I'm not sure.
Why don't we say like these are the 2
right.
that everybody in the meeting like universally really liked, and then the other close followers were these ones, and then say, in the proposal for the PMC one, say like our proposal is that we accept these 2 initiatives, and then the follow-up would be like, here are the other ones. If any of you feel strongly that one of these also deserves attention, discuss below. But that way the proposal could be like, yes, and there'd be like a follow-up that'd be like, do you want to add anything else? And I think that makes the vote pretty easy on the yes, no on the 2, and then have another follow-up issue where people be like, well, if there's no momentum or it's not necessary, we don't need to worry about it. And that could, not necessarily have to have a vote, but just be a discussion.
I think that's fair. Do we have, I think we have like leadership for, especially if we just have 2, because I think, Luke, you've either just said it now or said it in the last meeting, right? That you would take some leadership for a theming one. Is that correct?
I I said it in both places.
I thought you did, but I wanted to be sure.
Mhm.
I have already, although if somebody else wanted to do it, I've already taken a little bit of leadership on the telemetry one, although then it fell off, and I'm not, again, not sure what the next 2 months are going to be for me. I'm open to someone else taking leadership on that, but I could otherwise try to push that one forward. I have for the last 6 months been thinking to advocate for that as an issue, and so sort of helping with an initiative would be the next step.
Yeah. Well, I think actually I want to throw a little support for the better support for contrib project maintainers one, because like I think that's not quite wait, hands. I gotta remember that. I think it might not be quite shovel ready, but it has a similar notion to me. It's hitting a parallel thing to the telemetry one, where telemetry is we're looking to get direct feedback from our users. What I'm reading in the contrib project maintainers is a little care and feeding for active contrib developers to try to notice if they're feeling unloved and wander away, or like what they need to succeed. And that's a that's a role that in other organizations, I remember, Guy Kawasaki did that for Apple famously when the Macintosh was released, the idea of the evangelist. So I think maybe what you might be proposing is developer evangelism to some extent, like how you get people involved and happy and fed and promoted and just, whatever they need. Right. I think that's really important.
I suggested that one and partly around for I think some of the reasons you just said. I feel like our contrib space, well, part of it is that contrib could include themes, and maybe one of the reasons I'm not like advocating for it strongly today is I feel like if we boosted contribution and theming, which the other initiative might cover, that would get us partway. And that's where it's needed even more than with modules. But I do feel a little bit like, well, that one of the things that an initiative could be good at is addressing sort of process issues that it's hard for any individual to deal with. And for me, sort of like supporting contrib is a broad topic, which it's hard for any one individual to deal with, but a group of people could talk about it and make some steps forward. So it feels to me like it would be a good initiative, but I think probably I backed off of it a bit just because of it overlaps, I think, a lot with the theming stuff, and maybe it would be good to try that one first, and maybe we'll learn from that. And maybe, maybe there'll just be spillover benefits. So,
yeah,
depending on which direction that initiative goes.
I also like the idea of supporting our contrib developers, but if I only have to choose a few initiatives, I think that I would rather support the front end or people who can't develop community before I start support the contributed developers. So that's why my focus.
Right. Yeah, I think we're doing better on module contrib than we are at theming. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so it seems like we're leaning towards putting those two forward. We have the basic criteria met. It might be helpful if some of us fleshed out a proposal a little bit with just a slight more detail before it got sent to the PMC. I'm thinking just to make the PMC's job easier, and that could be done in another meeting. If we wanted to propose some follow-ups, or like Jen suggested, we could propose, here were the top two, these other ones also had some interest, what would they be? They would be, sounded to me like usability testing and this contrib thing. Was there anything else? Or actually the Drupal compatibility.
Yeah. I would say contrib, I mean, there's lots of good things in here. Yeah, Drupal compatibility, contrib support. Luke also liked his data import thing, import export.
Well,
mentioned documentation. It looks like there's sort of broad support across the board for everything. with like slightly higher focus on interim support than anything else.
Okay. I'm trying to, in my head, I'm deciding right now if I should just try to write up something to summarize what we've talked about and then bounce it off a couple of you, or if one or two of you wanted to have a meeting where we talked about fleshing this out.
I think it would be great if someone took a first stab at it and then we could have a meeting to review it if you wanted. And then that way we wouldn't spend the whole meeting
Right.
talking about things we already know. I don't know. It seems like we're almost there.
Well, as somebody who's, let me take a stab at this. It drawing up sort of a proposal based on the feedback we got today. I'll share it with a couple of you. We can have a meeting. I don't know if we wanted to bring it back like a week from now to this meeting or not. We can decide that as we go, I guess, if it would benefit from that or not.
I think it would be good if we create the PMC issue soon so that we can get the PMC's eyes on it. But I think if we can do that between now and the next meeting, we can use next week's meeting to say, this is what was proposed to the PMC. And that way, if there's anyone at next week's meeting who wants to weigh in on it, we have a chance to adjust if necessary.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Sounds good.
Luke or Joseph, either you have any other feedback on this process or?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And again, we can add, once these 2 or 3 get going, we can add others in the future. Part of my motivation is I'm hoping that the initiative process, by sort of creating different groups, that this is an opportunity to bring new people and get them involved in a very specific initiative. I don't know if that'll work or not, but one of our goals should be, again, not, as I've said many times, is not to have the same 4 or 5 of us working on all the initiatives, but really to figure out ways to bring in new people to help on these specific projects. So I want to keep emphasizing that so that we don't just end up burning ourselves out and not really accomplishing anything. Okay.
That's important.
Go ahead, anybody? I'm done.
I just said that's important. I'm just agreeing with you.
Okay. Jen,
Is that a wrap?
is that a wrap?
Yep, I think that's it. Thanks, guys, for the great discussion today.
Okay.
See you in the issue queue.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.